Welcome back to Kentucky Hemp Works Gaming. I'm Katie. I'm here today playing one of my favorite games ever, The Legend of Zelda. And it's a wonderful day because my daughter just got baptized this morning. I'm dressed up a little bit. I went to church with her this morning and she's been attending with her friends. Decided today was the day, so we're really excited about that. I just have been doing a sound check with my son and just kind of running around collecting some treasures. I got a heart piece. I got the gloves, and so I'm picking up rocks everywhere I go. So today I wanted to do a little bit of storytelling and talk about what is going on in Kentucky, where we came from, how we got to where we are, how I ended up in the hemp industry sort of by accident myself. But in national news, there are a couple of things. The first thing, my favorite, is the national debt. I mean, this is just, it's something I watch. I have a debt clock that I got from Thomas Massey's campaign, and it's autographed. It's like one of my favorite little things. And I like to check the national debt, just, start my day off right, see how much I owe, along with every other U.S. taxpayer. In the last few weeks, as I was reviewing the national debt, I think I got some of those numbers wrong because people corrected me in the comments, which means they actually watched my video, and that's cool. So we're at $39.6 trillion right now. So 39,626,000,000,000 right now, and we're getting closer to 40 trillion every day. And for every citizen in the U.S., that's $115,074. But for every taxpayer, it's $357,000. So every taxpayer sort of, if we divided that up, not that they're going to ever do that, but if we divided that up, every taxpayer would be on the hook for $350,000. I don't know about y'all, but I don't have that. So it's sort of just one of those things I like to think about. Like there's this imaginary debt that is hanging over my head, and I always say, boy, it's a good thing I don't have any debt of my own because the government has all that debt for me. So, at any rate, in other federal news, we had a big bill drop this week. There's a lot of chatter about this bill. It's been under discussion a while. There's been different groups that have been working on it. So the Kentucky Hemp Association has been working on this bill quite a bit. But there's also groups that are focused on seed and genetics and making sure that seed doesn't get caught in the crossfire of these adult use products. So if the danger and all these regulations have to be on something, it shouldn't be on seed. It should be on products people are using to catch buzz. So that bill that came out, that's Congressman Andy Barr's bill, and his bill actually does what leadership really wants to see, which is put some regulations. Now, nobody really likes the idea of federal regulations. We put regulations on hemp, the feds will figure out a way to screw up the entire industry. But what we do have is regulations that we developed here in Kentucky and that other states have to require that these adult use products be 21 and up, require them to be kept behind the counter, it requires them to have certificates of analysis. And so those are some sort of standard regulations that the industry can live with. And I think every year the industry's standards improve. And I do believe that the good actors in the industry are doing a lot better job of self-regulating and regulating each other than the government does in general when it comes to these kinds of things. But we do have to have some federal regulation if we're going to get an extension, if we're going to get, these products back on the shelves after November 12th. That's just the deal. Senate leadership, House leadership, they're not going to just let things go back to the sort of gray area. They're going to require that there be some kind of federal regulation. So Andy Barr's regulations does those same things that we talked about in Kentucky, but it also adds a tax to it, protects some interstate commerce. There are other things that the bill does that maybe people aren't as excited about, like a tax that's maybe 5 cents a milligram instead of 0.01 cents per milligram. Like there's a lot of ways that we could make these regulations better and improve the tax structure, improve the business environment for people. But are those pipe dreams, like, are those things that we would actually realistically see coming out of Washington? You sort of have to just develop a consensus in the industry and decide what everybody can live with. And if everybody can live with a five, so it would be 5 cents a milligram on beverages and a 5% tax on other adult use products. If the industry can live with that, it's not the worst thing that we've ever seen. It's not worse than a lot of states. There are states that have regulations that are tighter or worse than those. So it's not too bad, but it's obviously not the ideal regulations would really just loosen those hemp regs up completely, let it be regulated by the states. And if the state decides that they want to regulate it like tomatoes, then let them regulate it like tomatoes. And if another state doesn't want to do that, then they don't have to. For today, I kind of thought I'd do a little bit of storytelling. There's a lot of talk about the federal stuff, but a lot of people don't know where we came from. Like, how did we get to where we are here in Kentucky? Kentucky actually has a really long history of hemp, and I won't go back into like the really historical stuff. I thought I'd start around 2009 when we had our first hemp bill. But in the past, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Wisconsin, there was a lot of states around the nation that were very heavy in the hemp industry. Pennsylvania started things out with seed. They were one of the early adopters. Pennsylvania's always been strong on agriculture. And then eventually Kentucky got involved and started producing seed and then exporting seed and fiber to other parts of the country, like Wisconsin, where they grew fiber up there with Kentucky certified seed. And then places like Georgia that use the fiber that was produced in Kentucky and cotton farms, so a lot of cotton baling twine and things like that. But in the short history of Kentucky, the more recent history of Kentucky, this hemp has really been almost like a soap opera. It's been the stars aligned for a lot of things to happen, and that eventually led to the feds legalizing hemp as well. In 2009, we got our start in the hemp industry with when a group of grassroots volunteers decided that they wanted to legalize hemp, that it was an issue whose time had come. In my county, we met with Joey Pendleton. Joey Pendleton was my state senator at the time. He actually came out and met with a group of us to talk about some different issues. There was a couple of things going on at the time. One, Governor Beshear, the older Governor Beshear, had released his energy plan, and he was talking about all these, different types of solar and green energies. And so we had a little breaking down of that energy plan. And then I also brought up hemp and said, if we included hemp in this energy plan, it might really be better for Kentucky, and Kentucky farmers especially. And what was cool was Joey Pendleton, who became a friend, his eyes like lit up and he was very excited about it. This wasn't something that was new to him. He already knew about hemp. He already knew about, of course, the issue, like the marijuana thing, but he knew about hemp as an industrial crop, which was really cool. There was no need to explain anything. Since he was so excited about it, he volunteered to file legislation to legalize hemp. We worked with Senator Pendleton to develop some very basic hemp regulations. It was actually the first bill that I worked on that I considered like my own homework assignment. Like, okay, now sit down and work on this. And I ended up, drafting a bill that was like way too long, just unnecessary long. And my mentor at the time whittled it down to just a few pages. And then we had this hemp bill. So that was filed by Senator Pendleton. I really didn't want to do this dungeon in front of people because I get lost all the time and the boss is so hard I'm going to freaking die. So once we had our sponsor, Senator Pendleton filed that legislation multiple times. Actually, um, there was a lot of good education going on. I worked around the state, traveled the state with the hemp van. That was the Kentucky Hemp Museum, and did seminars and educational events and things like that. Set up tables and booths and just to talk to people about this crop and what it is and the difference between hemp and marijuana, which was just pretty much the biggest. That was the biggest confusion that everybody had. But we never really saw any movement on the issue, no serious movement on the issue until 2011. And that's when James Comer ran for Ag Commissioner. He came and met with the grassroots volunteers, Take Back Kentucky, and asked for their support and their vote. And we said, hey, yeah, we'll support you if you promise to help us legalize hemp. And surprisingly, he was very open-minded to the issue, and he said he would do that. He would help us legalize hemp. And of course, you know, when a politician says they're going to do something, you can't really be sure. Like, obviously, our first thought was, yeah, right. You know, like, sure, you'll help us with that. But he got elected, and he actually did. Well, the first thing he did when he got into office was he filed an audit on the ag department. So his own office, he requested a full audit on it, found all kinds of evidence of waste and corruption and fraud and abuse, and a lot of really just wild stories coming out of the ag department those days. Oh my goodness. These guys, this is the mm-hmm. So yeah, wild days at the ag department, and so Comer gets in there, follows through with what he said he was going to do. He works with Senator Paul Hornback to draft a hemp bill. Worked with the Kentucky Industrial Hemp Commission, and that was a state board that was developed in the 90s and had met maybe once or twice back in the 90s, but then never met again. So that board was, what is the word? Like, it was sort of like brought back into existence. Homer actually reached out to the chair, you know, still had the same chair as before, but he reached out to him, called a meeting, and that commission, I actually ended up appointed to that commission, which was interesting because I was appointed by Greg Stumbo. Greg Stumbo was Democrat, and he was the Speaker of the House at the time, I believe. He asked my state rep at the time if, you know, asked him about this Katie Moyer chick. He's like, well, I hear she's a Republican. Do we really want to add her to this board? And my state rep's like, well, she's a Republican, but she's pretty independent, I promise. And was I ever? Because not long after that, I was blasting Greg Stumbo for hijacking that bill, and I did not pull any punches. So in 2013, the Hemp Commission worked with a bipartisan team of legislators led by Comer and Paul Hornback. These were state and federal legislators. I mean, it was a big battle. It was one of those things where you like really saw corruption in action. There was like literal black helicopters flying around the state of Kentucky. Rand Paul came, Thomas Massey was a new representative at the time. There's no way I'm going to beat this boss with 2 hearts. I'm going to go back out and fill up with hearts, and I'll come back. Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, John Yarmouth, who was a Democrat. They teamed up with Democrats and Republicans on the state level, and grassroots folks all over the state. I mean, it was a very exciting. You can go back and watch the videos of it. I think there's pictures of it on the walls in some of these legislators' offices. But what ended up happening was, even though we passed a bill in Kentucky with flying colors, I might add, we didn't actually use it. And the very last day of session, leadership in the Democrats went in and just completely hijacked the bill. It was crazy. They changed the whole bill to basically say, delete everything after this line and then replace it with the following. And then it created this huge bureaucratic structure where University of Kentucky would be in charge of the hemp program, and oh my God, bro, there's no way that I beat this on the first try. That did not happen. We have definitely shifted timelines. I'm positive now. Okay. All right. But luckily, we didn't actually have to use that silly piece of legislation that got passed on the last day, because even though we were going to try, like, we actually sat down and started developing regulations to regulate Kentucky hemp just in the state of Kentucky. But during that period of time, on the federal level, there were changes happening as well. So there was pressure to try to pass some hemp legislation on the federal level. So in 2014, the feds passed a farm bill, and that allowed all state departments of agriculture or state universities to research hemp. So they were allowed to grow hemp with the expectation that they would research it. That actually gave Kentucky the flexibility to be able to grow hemp without fooling with this like massive bureaucracy. And let me tell you, University of Kentucky did not want to do that. There was nobody at the school that was like, yes, oh my God, it would be so great if we were in charge of the entire hemp program. But nonetheless, the feds passed the farm bill that gave us some flexibility to grow hemp under the ag department. Comer's administration selected a handful of participants that would be a part of this hemp pilot program. And I happen to be one of those. Because of my work on the Hemp Commission, I was able to work with local farmers and grow some hemp along with them. A lot of people actually think that I'm a hemp farmer, and I'm not. That is a common misconception, because a lot of times I say that I started growing hemp in 2014 with farmers. But I do not have a farm. I do not have a green thumb, but I do have a lot of opinions, and I have a real problem sitting down and shutting up. It's not something that I do very well. So naturally, I had met with some local farmers, and they indicated that they would be interested in growing hemp if it ever became legal. So they were the first ones that I called. Let's see. I'm wondering if I should go get the Master Sword first or the Magic Dust. Ari, do you have a preference? Magic Dust or Master Sword? Obviously, yeah. That is a good call. It'd be a lot easier to kill these enemies with the Master Sword, considering I think my sword is made out of like spoons or something. So in 2014, I got to work with a gentleman who became a good friend, Ken Anderson. He doesn't play video games, but I'm going to get him to come on here eventually. But so Ken has been working in the hemp industry for a while. He's been working with Dr. Dave West, who performed some of the United States' only research on hemp. But Dr. West actually was doing research on hemp in Hawaii. DEA wouldn't give him a license to actually grow hemp. The DEA wanted to have massive fences with barbed wire around the hemp fields. They had to be under constant surveillance. Like, they basically had to treat it like a marijuana. And so unfortunately, his research had to stop. So because Ken had already been working with different researchers and seed producers in other countries, he had a connection to get hemp seed from Italy. And so he's like, yeah, we get some hemp seed from Italy. It'll be all certified seed, phytosanitary certificates, and all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed. We went ahead and got permission to import those seeds from Italy. We were kind of paranoid about importing seeds into this country. It was a controlled substance. Years and years, you'd go to jail for trying to bring hemp seed, cannabis seed in from another country. And here we had like this sort of like handshake agreement with the state government, the ag department in Kentucky, that sure, you can go ahead and import this. So Ken is just tracking these hemp seeds through his broker and trying to figure out, like where are they? Why is it taking so long? And we had these delays, just delay after delay. The seed came in through Chicago. We were trying to get it to just dump right into Kentucky where we wouldn't be caught crossing state lines with this controlled substance, but it had to go through customs first, and it went through customs in Chicago. At that point, customs like stops, and we see it's not moving, and we're starting to panic a little bit. And so we call the ag department, and the chief of staff there, Holly, reached out to customs and said, "Hey, I'm with the ag department. The seed is for research. You should let it go." And so they did. They actually let that seed go, and it continued on its destination, which was Frankfurt. So it gets to Louisville, and it's, UPS has the seed. And what happens with the freaking DEA comes in and hijacks the seed in Louisville from the UPS terminal. And at that point, I thought that was it. I was for sure going to go to jail. Probably Ken was going to go to jail too. I thought that was it. So Jamie and Holly saved the day, kept us all out of jail, and everything was fine. That seed did eventually make it to Frankfurt. It was picked up, and we ended up sharing it with the University of Kentucky. Our state university got some of it. They actually had gotten their own seed, but I think they planted too deep on their first planting because, that's what it was all about, was research and trying to figure out, how deep do you plant it, what time of year, and yada, yada, yada. So they ended up needing some seed. We were able to share, and we had plenty to grow. So we grew about a half acre in the north part of the county and a half acre in the south part of the county. The next few years was pretty exciting for the industry. It became very popular. More and more people started using CBD. Our first product was the hemp root salve, which I've talked about before here. And, it was my favorite product back then. It's my favorite product now. But CBD became wildly popular, and so did CBD gummies. I mean, as always, folks like gummies. It's just a very popular way to, kind of administer medicines, whether it's vitamins, CBD, or whatever. So we saw this big proliferation in the industry, became very popular, and law enforcement took note of that as well. Of course, our focus here in Kentucky was educating law enforcement through the Sheriff's Association, through the state police. And we saw this Operation Candy Crush come right out of our southern neighbors in Tennessee. So Operation Candy Crush went after CBD gummies, but I think they were really trying to go after stores that were doing, I don't know, probably selling stuff they shouldn't, and they used CBD as the vehicle to go in there. But that didn't go so well for law enforcement. There ended up being a civil rights case later on. I even want to say that they were awarded some money. CBD was not illegal. The law enforcement wanted to say that these products had too much THC or whatever, but they couldn't ban it from their position under federal and state law. So Operation Candy Crush failed, and on the state level, we continue to grow exponentially. There was a hemp association. We actually ended up merging two hemp associations, the Kentucky Hemp Association and the Kentucky Hemp Industries Association. I believe that was 2020 as well, or right before 2020. We were growing as an industry. People were starting to make money. Companies were sponsoring things. We had celebrity sponsorships and endorsements, and you saw all kinds of growth, and it was just extremely rapid. And all of a sudden, COVID happened, and I watched 90+% of my business disappear overnight. We never had a retail store. We always did farm sort of level processing. When COVID happened, all of the stores that we sold into closed their doors except for the pharmacies. We were lucky that the pharmacies kept us going, and later on, chiropractors opened up to, being allowed to be open. We watched a lot of people just go out of business in 2020, and that was small business owners that had stores. We helped a lot of small businesses kind of get started with some ideas like bird suet, pasta, hemp moonshine, hemp bourbon, hemp lubricants made out of hemp seed oil. COVID really just cut the legs out from everybody in the industry, especially here in Kentucky, especially on the local level, especially mom and pop businesses. And I'll be honest with you, it was kind of hard to keep going after that. I was ready to call it quits. I was so frustrated. Not only was I constantly fighting the government on hemp, I was fighting social media, like many other hemp companies, fighting banks, fighting to try to get credit card processing. We were struggling to get shipping companies that would transport hemp mulch, just wood mulch, just regular old mulch, but they like banned us from shipping with them. You can go back and watch my TikTok channel. In 2020, I started making TikToks because I didn't have anything else to do. 95% of my business was destroyed, and then all the meetings were canceled. So we kept things going a while, but in 2021, everything changed for me personally when my town was hit by a tornado in the city of Dawson Springs. That tornado hit Mayfield, Kentucky, and Dawson Springs. It tracked for over 200 miles. It was extremely devastating and wiped out 75% of the residential structures in our town. So roughly 75% of the homes were destroyed here. So for me, I felt like volunteering was a great use of my time. I wasn't as busy at work and I needed something to do. And so I kind of dropped everything else. I put my business to the side, and so I was running for office. I put that to the side. And I put a lot of the hemp lobbying to the side, or so I thought, because I didn't really think there was anything to do. But then in 2022, Senator Paul Hornback decides to try to ban adult use hemp products. And his problem was that, people were using CBD to make Delta 8, and not just Delta 8, but those were that will say Delta 8. That's like kind of at the time, that's the only thing the legislators really were aware of. They were so worried about people that could potentially get high from industrial hemp that they went and tried to ban Delta 8 completely. What they should have realized, and maybe did realize, but kind of tested their luck, was that they couldn't just ban Delta 8. The federal law said that anything under 0.3% THC was legal, and so Delta 8 is not Delta 9 THC. Delta 8, Delta 9, two different things. At any rate, the Kentucky Hemp Association fought him in court in northern Kentucky, won the lawsuit, and Delta 8 was saved for the time being. Then in 2023, the same thing happened. State Representative Rebecca Raymer from Western Kentucky this time, she tried to pass the same thing, just outright ban Delta 8 products. But eventually she decided to hold a meeting with the Kentucky Hemp Association, and we said, hey, how about instead of banning these products, like we all really would like to have some regulations in place instead of an all-out ban. And let's just make this a 21 and up product, force people to keep it behind at the counter, make sure that they have testing done on every batch. Let's make sure that the labeling accurately matches what's inside the bottle, so that there's accuracy in labeling. And all of these things were things that we had already developed for CBD, but then we were applying them to Delta 8 THC in an effort to make these legislators, to satisfy these legislators that bad actors weren't just going to be selling these products to kids. So I think once Raymer realized that we weren't just silly hippies who wanted to get everyone's kids high, it was okay to allow adults to choose cannabis for pain relief, and nobody really wanted to see farmers get hurt or not be able to sell their crops. So one of the main statistics that we used during that effort was the fact that over 90% of Kentucky's hemp industry was based upon cannabinoids. There was I don't know, 2 or 3 maybe companies in the state that were doing seed at all. There was maybe 2 or 3 companies in the state that were doing fiber. As of now, I'm not sure that there's but a handful of those left. The cannabinoid market was the exciting market. It's what everybody was interested in, and that was 90+% of the industry, and nobody wanted to see that just disappear overnight. So instead of completely banning adult use products. We've regulated it. And those are the same regulations that we're now looking at putting together on the federal level. Just the basics. The feds include a tax, which we don't love, but we can probably survive. But that doesn't mean that we didn't continue to have battles after we developed those regs. We actually had our biggest battle of our lives. So in 2025, State Senator Julie Rocky Adams filed legislation that would ban what they called weed water, which is a silly name, but basically it's THC beverages. So what they found was these THC beverages were becoming wildly popular, and they were proliferating. The legislators like to use that term, proliferating. They were proliferating around the state, which means that businesses were successful. They were selling a lot of product. They were making a lot of money, aka proliferating. And the alcohol industry couldn't have that. There was just way too much money being spent on THC beverages and not enough money being spent on alcohol. Well, let's not mention the fact that most of their problems were caused by tariffs and the fact that young people aren't really as interested in alcohol as they used to be. We're starting to become a society where young people choose to make healthy food choices. And I know that the energy drinks and the candy and sodas and stuff, kind of tells a different story, but a lot of these younger folks are drinking tea, they're drinking matcha, they're using cannabis instead of alcohol, and they're choosing healthier options and just not drinking alcohol as much, and I think that's a good thing. Once again, the Kentucky Hemp Association fought back against the ban, and once again, we were able to put together some regulations. They weren't great though, so you couldn't go into, like, let's say a non-alcoholic bar and just have THC beverages. You had to go into an alcoholic bar or you had to go into a liquor store. The big thing that these regulations did that kind of shut out the hemp industry was to require anybody that wants to sell hemp beverages to have a liquor license. So that pretty much ensured nobody in the hemp industry, nobody selling hemp products was going to be able to sell them, because it's difficult, it's expensive. It's just, and it just doesn't make sense for somebody who has a hemp store to have a liquor license just to sell hemp beverages. And we tried to make some changes to that stuff in 2026, but it didn't happen. We ran out of time to get a good bill passed. There were several hemp bills filed in 26 that didn't make it. So what we still need to do in Kentucky, we really need flower sales. We've got to bring flour to the state. That could be for microgreens. It could be for sprouts. We need flour for teas, for cigars, animal feed. Animal feed is honestly one of the most exciting things. Hemp flour is so high in protein that it's superior than hemp seeds. We need to work on changing total THC to Delta 9 THC. I'd have to go into a whole nother explanation on exactly what that means, but it is important, and it would do a lot for the state, would give a lot of flexibility to farmers to not have to worry quite so much. That is if they're allowed to grow hemp after this year. We need to legalize the sale of viable hemp seed for food. That's important to me, and it's not an issue for a lot of people. And we've got to get hemp beverages back to where they should be. I mean, you should be able to have a bar or a hemp store, or whatever. You register with the state that you want to be a retailer of hemp beverages, pay the fees, and that should be it. You know, you shouldn't have to have a liquor license to sell these products. So we have a lot of things on the state level that we need to work on. None of them really matter if the feds don't give us an extension on the hemp ban on the federal level. I did not beat Gannon. I'm going to come back to that. This episode has been dragging on for a while now, so I will wrap things up as I meander high rule. So make sure that you are giving your legislator a shout. You can call them every day. You can call them, email them, text them. They have lots of ways to get a hold of them. and let them know that you support Andy Barr's bill, you support an extension. Let them know you support any pro hemp, pro cannabis legislation out there, because there are a bunch. Everybody's trying to either give us an extension on this THC ban, or give us some regulations, or decriminalize cannabis completely. I mean, there are a lot of different folks out there doing different things. And quite frankly, any of them, I think, solves the problem. So we'll see you next week at Kentucky Hemp Works Gaming, maybe with a friend, maybe not. We'll see how it goes. Kentucky Hemp Works leads the